Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self-publishing and marketing your books. I'm your host for this special takeover episode, where we previous guest authors on this podcast are going to turn questions back onto your normal hosts. I'm author D.L. Tillery, guest author of episode 10 in season 1. I'm known as the Mistress of Horror. I am married to all the other genres, but I am the Mistress of Horror, which means I am a multi-genre writer, but horror is my passion. I've been writing tales since I was 5 years old and was first published for my poetry at 19. If you want to find out more about me, follow me on all my socials and here on YouTube. Today, I'm also joined by Sako Tumi, my co-host. Sako, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sako Tumi, also known as Cass VOIT. I was a guest author of episode 8 in season 1. I am a self-published author 3 times over as of this video, and I write urban fantasy with horror overtones. I'm working on a course that pertains to marketing for authors, so keep an eye out for that.
Ooh, sounds interesting. Today, we're here with Shanon, writing under the pen name SD Huston, Ben Pick, and Morgan Lee. We're going to ask them questions about self-publishing and marketing their works. But before we jump into the interviews, do you have anything exciting happening in your author life or points of interest that you want to talk about, Sako?
I have reunited with my co-author, BC Brown Books, over the sequel to Flambeau. We're taking a much more relaxed approach this time so we can work on our own projects as well. I am also working on converting a 6-book series into serialized episodes for Nano. I spent the summer on writers and publishers panels and in-person conventions, including Imaginarium in Louisville, Kentucky, Balticon in Baltimore, Maryland, and Necronomicon in Florida.
Ooh, there's a lot going on. I have a few things coming up. I'm a poet in conjunction with my fiction writing. So my first poetry collection will be releasing on December 19th on Amazon for paperback and ebook, and audiobook to follow. I'll be doing the audiobook reading myself because why not? And everyone's heard my Lyra the Mistress at this point. Then my book launch Kickstarter for my debut novel, my debut dark fantasy novel, Kali Astral Tale Light Virgin. Book 1 will be open late January to early February. So that's what I have going on at the moment. Trying to just limit the things a little.
I know that feeling.
Yes. All right. So now let's talk about our guest authors today. Your normal host. SD Huston is a fantasy, romance, and YA fantasy author with a passion for writing about broken characters who face adversity to become a better version of themselves. And there may or may not be dragons, but there's always love to find. She's also the founder of the authortube writing conference, which is heading into its 3rd year. And on her YouTube channel, she does weekly writing live streams and podcast content videos about writing and self-publishing. Now, Ben Pick is an avid runner and application security analyst who enjoys writing character-focused stories in his spare time. He also posts weekly videos on YouTube about the writing process and running to write, where he compares writing to the struggles of running. He loves getting lost in worlds, from the books and games he enjoys to the stories he creates. When not writing, running, or gaming, he takes care of potentially the laziest plot hound in the world. Morgan Lee is a freelance editor and multi-genre indie author. Seed Among the Thorns is the first book in her young adult dark fantasy trilogy, a lover of imaginary worlds and the smell of ink on a page and spinning in the wind. Morgan has been writing since the age of 6 and has always dreamed of being an author because writing will always be easier than speaking. Welcome, everyone. Would you please take a moment to introduce yourself and talk about anything we missed?
Yeah, I think you covered everything in the bio. I took that line from about every author that we interviewed because I say that usually. So it's coming out December 15th. I'm looking forward to going on my vacation because actually I will start vacation the next day for a whole month. So I'm just looking forward to that time, that downtime of just getting away. And I know I'll end up writing because whenever I start taking time off, I get like all these ideas that just flood me and I just have to write a bunch of stuff down. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, that's what's going on.
Perfect. All right, Ben.
Sure. I don't have anything else to update with that. I will have my 3rd book with a wonderful let me see if I can point the right direction. Wonderful editor at that time. So I will likely be working on the 4th book in my manuscript. I'll probably start drafting it out as I do during my downtime while I send out my books to professional editors. So hopefully I am going to publish my 3rd book next year, and I'll be starting to write the 4th one after that.
Wow, inspiration right there. All righty, Morgan.
So nothing else to add with the bio, but what I have coming up, I am also working on my 3rd book, and that should be out pretty early 2024. And after that, I have a cozy fantasy series that I'm planning to start as well in 2024. So you'll have that to look forward to.
Nice. Very cool. So
And I just
now
got her
it's...
chapters.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I just got Morgan's chapters to critique. She sent them yesterday, but I saw them this morning, so I'm looking forward to it for that 3rd book.
I love the covers, by the way.
Thank you.
They're fire. I was on Amazon checking them out. Like, I have to get these. Of course, I love dark fantasy. I was like, these are fire. All right, so we're going to go right into the questions. The drilling will begin. So Shanon, you are first. So what made you want to start writing? Loaded question.
I was always a storyteller, and I realized that, I was always telling stories to my brothers, and they would say, make up a new one, because my brothers were younger. So I would always tell them stories. And then I wrote my first book. It was a class assignment that we had to write a book, and it was 16 pages long. I illustrated it as well, and I used yarn to put the pages all together with a cover and everything. And I was like, I really like
to do that.
Yeah. I was like, I really love this. I want to do this forever. And I remember telling my parents then, of course, they were like, yeah, you can't make it as a writer, so you might want to think of something else. But I always knew since that I was 9 years old when that happened. So I just always knew I wanted to be a writer, and I wrote all the time. So.
Awesome.
Are you comfortable discussing any publishing missteps or things which you would have liked to have done differently?
I have probably 2 different things. So one, I wish I understood what it meant to, study trends in the market, to understand what's popular, because I thought I knew when I was writing my first series. But as the series progressed, I realized that I was writing Irish mythology. I was marketing it as a YA Irish mythology. And it should have been a hint to me, but I didn't know what I didn't know, that the fact that there was no category on Amazon for Irish mythology, that it was going to be hard to market that book to people because we weren't looking for it. So I wish I kind of knew that better, but I think in some ways I wouldn't have known that without jumping in and doing what I've done. But I kind of regret all the money I spent on the series. And that would run into the second part, which is that I spent a lot of money on the book launches for the first book, second book, third book. I think it would be better for newer authors. And if I known this, I would probably have done this myself, which is, you don't want to launch to no fanfare. You do kind of want to get your book out there, but I don't think I would have spent as much money. I would have waited until I had a more established base and then spent that much money on marketing.
Great. All right. So what advice do you have for self-published authors from the moment they push the publish button?
Take a moment to celebrate. You've done something. You've accomplished. Even if you don't sell a single copy, you did something that not everybody does or can do. So if you've been able to take that step and you put yourself out there, which is very hard to put yourself out there, celebrate the moment.
That makes sense. All righty, Ben, we're coming your way. All right. So tell us a little bit about your journey to self-publishing your first book, Ben.
Sure. So this was quite a few years ago, even though I published last year my debut novel, Falling Through. And growing up, I always felt like I had stories that I wanted to tell. I always, that was in my bio where, I've always been in these worlds within my own head that I just wanted to kind of share with everyone out there. And I got to a point where I just started putting these ideas down. And then the more I put down, the more it sort of built off each other. And the more these seemingly disconnected events could be tied together. And the glue getting them together I won't even call it zero drafts, but the things that held those events together were contrived at best. So I had to fundamentally break down that original version of the story and repair it and build it back up stronger and stronger and stronger until I got to a story that I really wanted to tell. And so I feel like I've always had these ideas in me, and it's just a matter of getting them out in paper, and more importantly, getting them out onto paper as best I can from what I see in my head, because that is something I struggle with, in that I have these wonderfully vivid images in my mind. I have these incredible conversations where I'm in the shower and I'll just be thinking like, hey, this person needs to talk to this person. They need to say this, that, and the other. And then as soon as I go to my computer and start typing, things sort of get lost in translation. But I try to capture those moments as best I can, those eureka moments.
How did you make the decision to self-publish versus traditionally publishing? Did anything or anyone inspire you to self-publish?
Yeah, certainly. I think it was about control, where if I went the traditional route, I sent out a few query letters. I did a round of editing while I was still kind of fumbling around and trying to figure out exactly where I wanted to go. And I documented all that on, for you all as well. But I think that I know that my story is difficult to market, and I would have to change it in ways that I wouldn't want to make it fit within a specific genre and to be able to be marketed for a query letter for a traditional publisher so that they could then market out to a broader audience. I feel like my stories feel a little niche, where not everybody likes them, not everybody likes the struggles that the characters will be going through, but I tried to still write it universally so that anybody could pick up the book and enjoy it. But ultimately, I wrote this story for me, and now I'm trying to expand that out to get other people to pick it up and try it out.
Would you ever consider traditional publishing?
Sure, certainly. I have nothing against it. It's just I don't think I have enough clout to want to keep my stories as they are. I feel like, again, I would need to make some drastic changes to make them more... To make a traditional publisher want to invest in my book, it would need to be attractive to a broader audience, I think, the general public. So I would need to change some things within my story that I wouldn't necessarily want to do. So maybe in a future book, I could work on traditional publishing. But I like I said, if a traditional publisher sees my book and wants to pick it up, I would absolutely say yes in a heartbeat.
Alrighty, Morgan, here we go. When did you start writing your first tale? And what were your thoughts behind this tale?
Okay, so I kind of have two answers for this. The first little books that I ever wrote, like Shanon, with like the printed out notebook paper, drawing the pictures, I started doing that in like first, second grade. And I would write about my doll, the Amazing Amy doll. If anyone has ever had an Amazing Amy,
Yep.
She was the main character of all of my stories. And I would tell like little adventures that she'd go on, like Amy's worst birthday, Amy's best friend moves away, stuff like that. So those were my first little stories. But the first like full length book that I ever wrote was based on a project in my fourth grade class where we had to read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then after reading that, our assignment was to write our own fantasy world. And that is when I attribute my real falling in love with writing and creating fantasy worlds. And that story is still like the book of my heart. I started in the fourth grade, finished, I think, senior year of high school. And it's really bad, but it's mine. And it's a whole book. And it was the first thing that I ever like finished. And it's just, yeah, it's like, I think now I would classify the genre as Regency romance, maybe like medieval. There was kings and queens and a war and things happened, and it was great.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
What one misconception did you have about self-publishing before you published your work?
I thought that it was going to be easy. Because
I got this, no problem.
It's not easy. But when I started, I put that book I wrote that I finished senior year, I put that, well, first I queried it, which I shouldn't have. And then after I failed the query trenches, I was like, oh, create space before KDP was a thing. Create space. Ooh, I could just put it up here and then it'll sell millions of copies and I'll be famous. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I did. And yeah, that's my misconception that I have. It's not easy. There's a lot of work behind it.
It's cool to hear that actually from a published author. I think people would be able to connect with that. So are you comfortable discussing any publishing missteps or things which you would have liked to have done differently?
Yes. So in the same vein of thinking it's going to be easy and just putting up any kind of draft, I kind of did the same thing with my debut novel, Seed Among the Thorns. So that has gone through like an extensive journey from conception of idea to the final product that it is now. But I must have a hard time learning my lessons, because I did the same thing that I did with my first book. I put up the first draft and thought that it was like good enough and it was going to sell without any marketing. Don't know how that was going to work, but I put it up there, and I just regret not giving my stories like enough love and attention, and like not self-editing like I should have, and not investing in, you know, editors and marketing and cover design for our visual our visual listeners. That's an oxymoron. Anyway, for our visual audience, that's the word. I kind of dug up the first copy of Seed Among the Thorns before it was Seed Among the Thorns. It has a generic cover that I did on CreateSpace, and it was called Bondage. And fun fact, if you call it book Bondage, Amazon puts it in erotica, which this is not. So that's another mistake that I made. So yeah, I would just put more love and attention to creating my story. So that was a really roundabout answer, but
that's great advice, actually.
Yeah.
Good for us to hear. All right, Shanon, we're bringing it back to you for some more questions. So what marketing do you do for your books? And please don't hold back, because all of us need to know this, like every little thing.
So yes, my marketing plan is pretty complex, everything that I do. So I do the things that most people think of when it comes to marketing, which is like, you know, advertisements and social media. You know, I've taken advantage of that. I do Amazon ads. I haven't tried ads on Facebook yet, and I haven't tried them on BookBub, just Amazon. And the social media, of course, I have YouTube and Instagram, and I did open a TikTok account this year. So I started with that. But then I also do book promos. Now, my book promotions, and that's like the Fussy Librarian or Book Bongo or Book Barbarian or Booksy or Free Booksy. I did a ton of those last year. And when I was looking at figures for Ben's episode that we recorded yesterday, I'd spent over $1,600 on those types of advertisements last year. And this year, I've only spent $134. So huge difference. The other ways that I market, which could be a little bit not really thought of as marketing, but it is like getting book reviews. I use Voracious Readers Only to connect my book with interested readers who get the book with the idea that they would leave a book review. And getting those book reviews is important for your marketing, because it can boost your book's visibility and credibility, and then it creates that social proof. So there's that. I also do a lot of networking through like Story Origin, and I joined BookFunnel this year. And I'm also part of like a women's fantasy group. So that's like book promotions, group promotions, swaps, that kind of stuff, and review promotions as well. So there's definitely a lot to do. And then the biggest thing that I probably did this year as far as marketing is doing a Kickstarter. So, and that is a marketing tactic that combines crowdfunding with book promotion. And essentially, I think I came to the realization during Ben's episode yesterday when we were filming it that like, oh, well, this is really a free tactic to market, because you don't pay to be on Kickstarter.
Yep.
So, and everything you would pay for to start, you would do anyways, like getting a good book cover, having good editing done, having a good book blurb if you pay for that or you do it yourself. Either way, you have to have all those things in place, or you should have all those things in place before doing your Kickstarter, which is the same as if you're trying to just put it up on Amazon and market it somehow. So, so I've do a lot of different marketing things. I think that covers everything. Email marketing. That's another big one, right? So email marketing is a huge part of my marketing plan. I hit actually 5,700 subscribers this morning, which means I need to call, because I know there's some that don't do what I need them to do to be part of my group. And if, people are not being interactive, I don't want to keep them. I know there's different thoughts of, there's different ideas of whether or not you should keep everyone on your email list. But since I do not make back the money that I spend on my email list every month, I am not going to keep around subscribers who are not doing anything, who are not interested in my writing.
Smart move.
As an indie author who's had a successful Kickstarter, what are 3 tips that you would give to another author interested in doing a book launch Kickstarter?
Number 1, give yourself plenty of time. So I was told 3 months. I gave myself 6 weeks thinking, well, I'm pretty industrious because I know I stay pretty busy compared to most people I know. And it still was not enough time. I basically didn't sleep that last week. So definitely give yourself more time. And I would say if you can give yourself more time than 3 months, I would do it. That does mean that may not work in some models for people who are trying to publish quickly. Like they get a book done, they're like, I want to just get this out. That won't work because you need to give yourself time to learn the platform and get it set up. And the second tip is treat it like you would any other publishing platform. You spend time learning Amazon and how to publish on Amazon and what's the best categories to choose and how should you present your book. Same thing for Kickstarter. It has its own rules that it plays by, not necessarily the same as Amazon or Drafted Digital or Ingram or wherever else it is that you upload your book to. I would say, though, that it takes more time to learn what works and what doesn't work on Kickstarter. Although I would say Amazon could take as much time if you really put the time into it. But the thing with Amazon is that you do have tools that can help you speed up the process. Like, it's made by Kindlepreneur, KDP Rocket. It's a paid service or a paid software, one-time fee. It helps you with categories, keywords, all of that. It does all of your searching and research for you for the Amazon platform. So if you've paid the money for that, it's a shortcut to get to that stuff. Same thing if you pay for like the K-Lytics reports. It gives you a shortcut to what the covers look like in your genre versus you spending the time doing it. There's no shortcuts when it comes to Kickstarter, especially for publishing any type of book, whether it's, there's probably a little more history on comic books than there are in graphic novels than there are on fiction and children's books and stuff. Those are still relatively new. So there's not a huge backlist of stuff to go through, but it still takes time to learn how the platform's set up and find the stuff that's going to help you determine what's going to work for your genre on the platform. And I didn't do a third tip. Third tip, have good graphics.
Smart.
Ben, what was the best money that you ever spent marketing books?
This is going to sound a little ironic, but it was through Kindle. It's called free book promotions. Now, I did that in conjunction with several other services, but I have my books right now, the ebooks, and I dropped the price down to free for a 1-week period or 5 days or whatever the maximum amount is. I did that on the first book's anniversary. And in conjunction with that, I spent money on Sapphire Ink Press and Free Booksy. So with those 2 services that I did spend the money on, it linked everything through to my KDP or to a book funnel that I had where the book was also free. And between those, I had a significant spike in books that were downloaded. And in addition to that, it sort of funnels people through. And I noticed a slight bump in the number of sales of my second book. So when I go through and I'm publishing book number 3, I'm going to try and do the exact same thing where I offer the first book for free and hope that sort of trickles through to the second and then third book.
Oh, good advice. All right, Morgan, if you could only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published writers, what's your best marketing tip or trick?
I think my best tip would be to try everything at least once, because you never know what is going to produce fruit or what's going to work for you. I'm not the best at marketing yet. I still have a lot of different things I want to try and a lot of things to learn about marketing. But I say that be open to trying anything and do your research on the different types of marketing that are available, both free and paid, so you can tailor it to what is going to work for you.
Shanon, how much time do you spend working as an author versus other writing-related stuff like editing, finding readers or reviewers, marketing your books, etc.?
I wish I would have thought to do this ahead of time, but this year I've been tracking everything, mostly. I started the year off really well, tracking all my writing time and what I spent editing, what I spent looking for reviewers and stuff. But when the Kickstarter stuff started happening, and I was also doing the authortube writing conference, then that's part of also why I didn't sleep for that last week. So then I stopped really tracking everything like I should have. And I know I wasn't writing during that time, which I was mostly worried about or more concerned with tracking my writing time. So I've done a lot more writing this year than I have before, but my goal was to try to do it at least like 60% writing time and then the rest 40%, which I started off the year really great until I hit about June. And then that went more to like 90% everything else and 10% writing stuff. So, but I'm in the process of flipping back now. I've got a lot of writing done in the last few weeks. And so I would say that my stuff is seasonal. I think that's what I'm finding with me, especially I think because of my own tendencies. And I haven't been diagnosed with anything, but I do find that if I can concentrate on a single task all day long, I can get a lot done on that single task versus if I try to split it up, like do a little bit of writing and do a little bit of finding reviewers and do a little bit of authortube stuff. And, you know, if I split up like that, I don't get as much done when I split up. But there are days when you don't have a choice because you have deadlines. And those are days where I'm not as productive, but I still try to get my deadlines done. So I say that what works best for me is seasonal, where I have, you know, periods where I do tons and tons of writing. And I can usually write a lot, especially if I'm dictating. I can get a lot of writing done. I wrote 20,000+ words last week. The week before, I wrote about 15,000 words in the week. So yeah, I can do a lot of writing in when I'm in my writing time, if that's all I'm doing that day. Then I apply the same effort to other things as well. So yeah, seasons work better for me. I just know this is my writing time, this is my, you know, marketing time, this is my author platform time.
Cool. What is a day of planned writing like for you? Can you give us a quick rundown, like when you sit in the chair or you get coffee or whatever it is you do?
Yeah. So I usually, I get my first cup of coffee. Usually I always know, I say always, I'm sure there was a day in there somewhere in the last few years this wasn't true, but I always know usually what I'm going to write when I sit down to write. I do a lot of visual plotting. I don't know how else to explain it because I don't do plotting on paper, but I play out scenes over and over and over again in my head all the time. It's always happening. My brain does not shut off. So, you know, I'm constantly seeing what's going to happen, and I see the words on the scene sometimes. Like, okay, this is the right word that I need to use here. So when I sit down, I already know what I'm going to do and what I'm going to write. That's usually get started. And because I'm more of also a discovery writer, I may already know what I want to do, but it always ends up changing as I start writing. So then now I'm thinking of what I'm doing as I'm writing. So, but yes, plotting does not work for me. I have tried it. I've told myself I could do so much better if I could plot. I could get things done faster, but then I get bored by writing, which was not the whole reason why I quit working to write. I went to enjoy my writing. So I just realized I have to work within my own capabilities of what works best for me. Did I answer the question?
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, Ben, what 3 key points to creating a captivating lead character in your opinion? What are the 3 key points for that?
Yeah, for the first thing, I would say make them dynamic. So you want them to change over time. And yes, there are exceptions to that, where you have, you know, your archetype of some military soldier who is the exact same grunt that they are at the beginning and at the end. But for the most stories, you want to have your characters go on a journey and be changed by it. Whereas, like with those, you know, archetypes, it feels like they're more reactionary, where they will always be this go-getter, whatever. But you want your characters to change and grow and adapt to the scenarios that they come across. And then the second thing, I would say, make them real. Throw in some unique characteristic from someone you know, or something, some odd quirk to make them stand out so that they don't feel like they're just a flat character moving from point A to point B. That's 2. And then number 3, make them fun. So make them a character who you would want to hang out with in a bar, maybe not within the confines of the story where it's all life and death, or where, you know, they might be going through some incredible drama or some point where they have to act out. But I enjoy stories a lot more when I feel like I could actually know these characters, that they were real, or even make them so that they feel real, as opposed to characters who are honestly terrible people. And then I'm just like, well, why do I care if they survive this story or not?
I love that. That's good advice.
What advice would you give when planning a book series?
Ooh.
This is something I'm struggling with right now. You don't need to know exactly where the story is completely going. I mean, I have a vague idea of where I want to ultimately end up with my series. I'm planning for 6 books, but again, that has balloon, that is shortened down. It's really helpful to know where you want to go. While I'm working on, like I said, book 3, I'm planning out book 4. I have ideas for book 5. I know vaguely where I want to go for book 6, but I can start introducing plot elements or tiny threads or specific lines or places where I want the characters to go. I can introduce that in, say, book 1 for things that won't get flushed out or realize until book 3. And that is, book 2 wouldn't have happened without book 1, and then book 3 wouldn't have happened without books 2 and 1. So I was kind of building in these Easter eggs here and there throughout the entire experience.
What are you working on next?
Finishing out the series. It's going to be a few years before I get there. But like I said, I'm planning out book 4. I'm planning where I want to go for book 5. Actually, I was almost late to this interview because I was writing down some ideas of where I wanted book 4 to go. And then that naturally flowed into some ideas where I wanted to get in book 5 and then eventually book 6. So I was just sitting at my computer, just tapping away ideas as quick as I could. And then I had to race down to my basement to set up my recording studio.
Okay, Morgan, what does your typical writing life look like? Do you plan to write for a set period of time every day? Have a weekly/monthly, yearly word count goal?
So I don't really have any kind of word count goal when it comes to my writing. I'm not really motivated by word count goals. So sometimes like Nano is hard because I can write 50,000 words, but for me, that's like half the book. So it's like not a whole book.
Oh, you're one of those writers.
Yeah, I'm long-winded. I write long things. And then for my typical writing life, I don't write every day. And kind of like Shanon, if I like to have just one singular task to focus on. So if I'm writing, then I'm going to spend like all day writing. I'm going to get whatever done. So I don't really have those goals. The goal is just to finish. And however long that takes me is however long it takes me. This year, I've been trying to experiment a little bit more. Earlier this year, I participated in the 24-hour writing challenge. And then I kind of failed, but this past, I think it was earlier in September, they did the 7-day book challenge with Mama Maggie and SD Haggis and Carol Brown over on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And they did the 7-day book challenge. So I've just been doing a lot of different challenges like that to see what works best for me, because I'm the writer who doesn't like drafting. I like vision and editing and making the story better. And I like to have words to work with. So yeah, I've just been trying is fast drafting going to work for me? Do I have to outline the whole thing? Should I discovery write? So my writing life is kind of all up in the air, and I kind of just try to be flexible, learn, and kind of grow with what I naturally like to do, and try to toss in little methods and stuff from other people's writing processes.
If you were offered a movie deal for one of your books, would you take it if the deal was that someone else would write the screenplay and you would need to accept the changes as they saw fit? Please elaborate on why you would or would not.
No, I would not. And that is because, that's kind of why I'm a self-published indie author. I like control. I like my story. I wrote the story that I wanted to write. And if I'm going to see it adapted into the screen, whether book or movie, I want to have some kind of say in it. I want to be there to write the screenplay. I want to be able to have input on casting choices and changes from book to movie or book to TV. I want to be involved in the writer's room, the creation of my story, because I like control.
Girl after my own heart. I definitely can understand that one.
You're definitely better than I am.
I would be the same way. There's a reason why I'm self-publishing. I like the control.
That's why I went after control. Hey, we like control. People can't handle our control too bad.
Yeah.
So, Morgan, if you had to pick between writing sci-fi, romance, or horror, which one of these genres would you write, and why would you choose that one over the others?
It would definitely be horror.
Oh,
definitely.
I thought you were a fantasy person like me.
I am, but since I write dark fantasy, which kind of borders on the line of horror.
It's a child of horror for sure.
Yeah, and I like writing the darker things. And I used to be a really avid horror reader when I was younger. I don't read as much horror stuff as I do now. And then it could be middle grade horror, it could be adult horror, young adult horror. So it doesn't have to be gory or scary.
There's so many layers to horror, so yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And then Romance, I am dabbling in romance, but I don't think I want to stay there for. If that was the only thing I could write, I don't think I could stay in that lane for a long time. And then sci-fi, it's just not my jam. I like sci-fi, but I don't think that I would want to only write sci-fi over
I
there.
didn't realize fantasy was not even a choice that was given to you, so maybe.
Yeah, we didn't even give you a choice of that. But sometimes sci-fi is very horror-esque too. It can be, depending on what type of sci-fi it is, of course.
Yeah.
So, she's a horror buff. Look at that. I didn't know this. Okay. All right. And now let's hear some questions from other authors who've guested on the show, but couldn't make the recording.
Hi, I'm A.F. Stewart, author of fantasy, horror, and poetry, as well as a podcaster and graphic designer. You can find me in my books at afstewart.ca. And this question is for all three of you, for Shannon, Ben, and Morgan. And it's, have you used any of the tips and tricks from your show in your own publishing journey?
My answer is absolutely. Some of the first people we brought in were newsletter experts, and based on what they told us, I started my own monthly newsletter. I've also updated that with each person that comes in and shares some new piece to include within newsletters or just within marketing ourselves. So now I use my newsletter to promote when I had the 1-year book anniversary and when I have important episodes coming up, like my 100th episode, or just to share fun dog photos where I can get a little bit of who I am out to a much wider audience. I think that is a great way to showcase what I'm capable of as a writer and to just meet other people out there in the community, whether or not they support me through my books or on YouTube. It's just fun to get responses and to see how people react to fun pictures of Rufus. There's also multiple efforts from recent interviews that I want to experiment with. We talked to people who are experts on Ream and have achieved some great successes there. So that's something that I want to experiment with. And Ream is a subscription service where authors can directly interact with readers and dedicated fans to give not only their works, but additional bonuses like weekly or monthly meetups and in-progress chapters. So once I get more time, likely after I finish publishing my 3rd book, I'll look into Ream. So that way I can show the entire process that I followed to write and then publish my 4th novel. And I think that would be a great way to pull back the curtain and explain my own process, get pretty fast feedback from fans between what does work and what doesn't work.
Excellent question. So yes, I have definitely used the things that I've learned here on the podcast in my own writing and publishing journey. Especially this year, I've been in a research phase. So I've just been taking a lot of notes on a lot of the stuff everyone has said, from book launches to subscription platforms, and kind of just keeping record of what I would like to use in my own publishing journey in the future. So yes, this podcast has definitely been a wealth of information that I am so excited to use in my publishing journey.
I have used several of the tips and tricks from our show for my own publishing journey. While I could probably point out something from every episode, there are some that come to mind right away with this question. And the biggest one is A.L. Canor, who we had in our first season. And the biggest thing that is part of my life right now is when she talked about writing a series non-linearly. And this is the first time I ever heard of a non-linear series and writing that way, in which the storyline between books is all happening at the same time. You're with different characters, and it's a way to market those books one at a time as if they're first in series, because they are standalone books. And she did this with 4 girls who were friends, and they text message each other, so you got a little bit of the other girls' stories throughout each of the books. And I have read all the books just so I could see how she did this. I also love the stories as well, and I reached out to her and I said, I'm really inspired by what you did, and I think I want to do it as well. And she gave me some tips and tricks on what she would have done differently to make it better. And so hopefully I've done justice to her suggestions. And I'm doing that right now with the series that I'm writing. My first 3 books are all happening at the same time. It's 3 brothers. They cross over into each other's stories. And it's very difficult to do, let me tell you. But the good part is that I do get to market each book as a standalone, but it's also part of a series. And so if someone likes it well enough, they'll pick up the next book, but then they don't have to pick up that first book I wrote at, first. They could pick it up second or third. So I really love this idea. And then there's one more thing that she talked about that I took away from her interview that has actually kind of shaped a lot of my thinking and what I want to do in my author life, which is the one tip that she gave on this was baby your newsletter subscribers. And so that is, whenever you have a cover reveal, you show them first. If you've got the next title of your next book, you tell them first. You tell your newsletter subscribers everything first. They get it first. You baby them. And I love this idea because it is a way to connect to the people who are reading your books. You're connecting to your readers. And I love that idea of knowing that something I'm writing is speaking to someone, that is entertaining them in some way, or that it says something to them that is important. Whatever it is, I like to have that connection and knowing that I am doing something that someone enjoys. And this has actually gone on to shape a lot of the decisions that I've made over the last year in my author life. I've kept that baby my newsletter subscribers. I've kept that. I do everything first with my newsletter subscribers. I'd probably say the next thing that influenced me was when our very own A.F. Stewart, she talked about cover design and colors, and she talked about how green covers don't really sell book covers. And my first series is all green, and I did this because it is a national identity color for the Irish. My books are Irish mythology, but it really pushed me to see that as much as I enjoyed writing my first series, it's not where I want it to be. And I felt like that moment of, yes, green covers don't sell. Well, Irish mythologies don't really sell either. I think it's the wrong time for that market right now. I don't think many people are looking for it. So that really pushed me to say, okay, yeah, I need to really think about what I'm doing. If I do want to get my words into hands of readers, what can I do? And of course, then I made sure that my next book cover has blue, because that's my favorite color. And I don't really like green at all. So that really pushed me. There are some other tips and tricks that I've kind of put like in my back pocket that I'm like, okay, I'm saving this to use it in the future. A.F. Stewart was also from our first season. The next person, Shanti Huston, was also from our first season. She was actually our last guest of the first season. And she blew me away with how much she was able to do in her life. I think she was only 15 at the time of the recording and already had several books published. And she was very knowledgeable in her marketing steps. And the one thing that she really did was that she really got herself onto podcasts. She put herself out there, and that's the way she did her marketing to sell her books. And I think this is a really great idea because I've mentioned it before in previous episodes, but it's either you have time or you have money when it comes to marketing. And of course you could have both, but if you only have one or the other, you have to decide which one is more important to you. And of course, podcasts generally are free. People don't typically charge for you to go on an interview, but it does take time to research a podcast and make sure that you're a good fit for their audience. And this is something I've always wanted to do, but I know it's going to take time, so that's why it's in my back pocket because I'm not there yet. Then the next thing was from our second season, Robert G. Culp, and he talked about a lot of great things, but one of the things he talked about was what he did with his perma-free book. He used serial platforms to put his perma-free book out there to draw readers in to learn more about him and his books, such as like Inkit. He put his perma-free book on Inkit, and I thought that's a great strategy. And I will do that one day, but I don't have a perma-free book yet. I want to get a few more books written, and then I'm going to probably make some of my books perma-free in the series that I have. So that is one that's in my back pocket. The next person I have a tip from that is in my back pocket is from Estelle Van de Velde. She was our first guest of our third season. What she talked about was translations, and she translated her English book into French. And this is something I want to try. I think it's something that I could possibly do, but it is something in my back pocket, like way back pocket, because it is something I do want to approach with translations eventually in the future. And then the last thing is from Inka York, who was also in our third season, and she talked about Ream, which this just went right along with what I've been trying to do. Ream is something I've already been thinking about doing since it came out last year. I did not jump on it then because at that time I was planning for my Kickstarter. So I've talked about how I want to get closer to my readers. I want to have that connection there with my readers a little bit more. It's different, having a reader who is like through my Kickstarter that I did earlier this year. I was able to connect to readers directly versus me not knowing who's buying my book from Amazon or any of these other places where your books may be. Those are not as close of a connections unless they sign up on your newsletter list, which doesn't always necessarily happen. And I think Ream is the next step for me to be able to connect more with my readers. And that is something that is coming really, really soon. I'm already in the process of getting that set up, and I should hopefully have it done and open by the end of January or February. So thank you so much for the question, A.F. Stewart. This was a really good and thoughtful question of the things that we've learned and the tips and tricks that we've learned from this podcast.
Thank you for your answers. Bye.
Well, the hosts of the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast have answered all of our questions. Can you all please tell our listeners where they can find you and purchase your books? Let's start with Shanon.
I'm Shanon. I write under the pen name of S.C. Huston. You can find me on my website, scHuston.com. I also have a YouTube channel under the pen name of S.C. Huston. My books are wide now, so you can find them in most retailers and in your library. So please look for them there. So yeah, and at this moment, I probably will not have my Indiegogo still up. I mean, I haven't quite picked a date yet. I will, for a couple of weeks, be putting my, I'm putting together a special bundle to sell direct on my website. But when I get that bundle up, I will also have pre-order sales up for the book on retailer platforms. So that may come at this point, maybe not. I haven't decided on a date yet, but it's going to be within the month of December through January. Somewhere in there, it's going to change. So look out for that.
Cool. Ben?
Certainly. You can find me every week on Running to Write, the YouTube channel. It comes out Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. My books are also available in any retailer you can find. I think Amazon is probably the best one. I'm not wide, or I've shrunken down from wide since I'm focusing on being in KDP at the moment.
I think it's kind of funny how I went wide and you went to KU.
Well, there were some issues with Ingram Spark, so I kind of shrunk down, and now I'm exclusively with Amazon. So I will hopefully expand out, but for the moment, Amazon is really working.
Cool, good call. And Morgan?
So you can find me on my website at authormorganlee.com, and I am on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Author Morgan Lee. I have a secret pen name that is launching in 2024 that I should be announcing sometime in December when this episode comes out. So look forward to that. And you can buy my books on Amazon. Seed Among the Thorns is book 1, Seed Among the Rocks is book 2, and Seed Among Good Ground will be released early in 2024.
Nice. Look forward to that. So I really have enjoyed being the takeover host and my lovely co-host, Sako, with me. It's really fun. And I mean, I had to take some notes in between of the authors talking. Like, let me make sure I take some of these notes down. I got to make sure I know these things. I know all the things. So it's a lot of information here, and I really did enjoy it. It's a well of help, these type of shows for us authors, self-published authors out here, and us people who like to have control over things. We need to know all the information. So
I'm very grateful that you agreed to come and take over too.
Of course. Anytime. Help everybody get like all the information they need. So I'm all willing to be a part of that because we all need help. If some of us had help earlier on, then these type of things were around, really would have, stopped a lot of the problems that we came across. So happy that you all took up the mantle to try to help a lot of us out. So we appreciate you immensely. You have no idea. So before we say what's coming up next in the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast, I want to give Sako a chance to say whatever it is you want to say and want to add before we go.
It was really fun to kind of spin the table with this episode and ask you questions that I've always kind of wanted to ask you. So I'm really appreciative, especially since I'm just breaking into some of the stuff that we were talking about, and marketing is my jam. Yeah, it was really great talk.
And do you have anything you want to let the listeners know, like where to find you and such?
You can Google me at Sako Tumi or Psycho Sako. You'll find all of my social media, my YouTube, maybe my website. Yeah, I'm Googleable.
And all the links will be in the show notes and description box.
Cool. That really helps. All right. I'm author DL Tillery, and I've been your host for this special episode. So you can find me on my links below because I like to do everything under one banner. I like to use Linktree so you can find literally everything. You'll click my Linktree and be like, whoa, why is she everywhere? Did she ever stay to one place? No, that's not, you won't be saying that to me. And I'm also here on YouTube. Thank you so much to the podcast listeners and viewers. This episode is the last long episode of season 3. Shorter episodes for the self-publishing tips or trick of the week will still be coming out every week. January 15th will start season 4, and there are several exciting guest authors already lined up for the next season. Hopefully, we'll learn more from authors such as Troy Lambert, who just published a book about SEO for authors, and Emma Bennett, a hybrid author of contemporary romance and children's picture books. So I always have something I like to say at the end of anything I have to do with. So I must say it here, even though this isn't a scary place. But stay scared.
Oh, man.